In 1873, Mark Twain and Charles Warner co-authored a novel about American politics and society. This was a time of tremendous change. America's economy grew at an extraordinary rate, generating unprecedented levels of wealth. Railroads and soon telephone lines stretched across the country, creating new opportunities for entrepreneurs and cheaper goods for consumers. Historians called this era that begins in the early 1870s and ends in around 1900 the Gilded Age. By calling this era the Gilded Age, however, Twain and Warner were sounding an alarm. Something is gilded if it is covered with gold on the outside, but made of cheaper material on the inside. A Gilded Age might appear to sparkle, but Twain, Warner, and other writers sought to point out that beneath the surface lay corruption, poverty, crime, and great disparities in wealth between the rich and the poor. Whether the era was gold or merely gilded, it was certainly a time of great cultural activity. Industrialism and urbanization altered the way Americans looked at themselves and their society, and these changes gave rise to new values, new art, and new forms of entertainment. In 1872, at the age of 32, William Graham Sumner became a professor of political and social science at Yale College. Sumner's classes were very popular. One of his students, William Lloyd Phelps, illustrated Sumner's tough, no-nonsense approach with this example of a class discussion. Mr. Sumner, don't you believe in any government aid to industries?
No, it's rude. Hog or die.
Yes, but hasn't the hog a right to root?
There are no rights. The world owes nobody a living.
Well then, Professor, you believe in only one system, the contract competitive.
It's the only sound economic system. All the others are fallacies.
Well, suppose a professor of political science came and took your job away from you. Wouldn't you feel sore?
Any professor is welcome to try. If I lose my job, it's my fault. My business is to teach the subject so well, nobody will take my job.
This conversation between William Graham Sumner and his student William Lloyd Phelps became known for featuring some of the major philosophies that arose during this time period. The concept of individualism, for example, supported that people could enter into society in hopes of furthering their own interests without taking the interests of society into consideration. Its main focus was on supporting the liberty, rights, and independent action of each individual. It also supported the idea of social mobility that enabled the working class to gain higher positions in the social rank, depending upon the amount of effort and work that they put forth. Another very important theory that changed the mindset of people during the Gilded Age was social Darwinism. Philosopher Herbert Spencer applied Charles Darwin's theory of evolution and natural selection to human society. Natural selection was a Charles Darwin theory of the living being's evolution process. In this theory, animal species that cannot adapt to the environment in which they live gradually die out, while those that do adapt thrive and live on. Spencer took this biological theory intended to explain developments over millions of years and argued that human society also evolved through competition and natural selection.
That's what I'm saying. Ethical ideas and sentiments have to be considered as parts of the phenomena of life at large. We have to deal with man as a product of evolution, with society as a product of evolution, and with moral phenomena as products of evolution.
He argued that society progressed and became better because only the fittest people survived.
The weakest ones will gradually disappear, and that's how society will progress.
However, these ideologies were not well accepted by everyone. While many Americans embraced the ideas of individualism and social Darwinism, others argued that society's problems could be fixed only if Americans and their government began to take a more active role in regulating the economy and helping those in need. These social criticisms grew. Journalist Henry George had a very important role in American history. He raised questions about American society and led the way in challenging the ideas of social Darwinism and the economic doctrine of laissez-faire, which opposed any government programs that interfered with business economics. George observed that despite industrial and social progress, the gulf between the employed and the employer is growing much wider. He believed that as Livier carriages appear, so do barefoot children. George offered a simple solution of land ownership and a single tax to promote social equality and also provide the government with enough money to help the poor. The Gilded Age also adjusted the living standards of many Americans. Industrialization enabled Americans living in urban communities to spend money on entertainment and recreation. Increasingly, urban Americans, unlike their rural counterparts, divided their lives into separate units, work and home. Saloons, for example, played a major role in the life of male workers. Places like New York's Coney Island allowed working-class family men and single adults alike to have a place where they could escape from the stress of work. With the rise of spectator sports, men gathered around these hubs of entertainment to discuss their regional sports teams.
It's so difficult. I mean, for a moment you forget about your obligations and work and responsibilities. And the wife? Man, when the end of that workday gets closer, all I can think about is going to watch my Brooklyn Dodgers play.
Without urbanization in the late 19th century, America would not be what it is today. But, as much as this era signified progress, it signified struggle. During this time period, the people of the world began to see the U.S. as this beautiful urban oasis in which any person who puts forth the work can make it. This surface level view of the U.S. is its beautiful golden exterior. But, as many who immigrated west soon came to find out, the country had an extremely cheap interior with a multitude of problems facing it. Once on the inside, many came to the realization that social mobility as it was presented to them was a true fallacy. Americans, poor or immigrant, were almost subjected permanently to a life of poverty with no way out. Similar to the caste system, your socio-economic class as opposed to your work ethic determined your lifestyle. The Gilded Age of American history, at its core, was a shift in the world's view of the U.S. Regardless of the problems that it faced on the inside, America became known as the immigration destination